It's music therapy. It's music therapy.
Music therapy with
Fake Dr. Krock probably asks people a lot how they're feeling, but how does fake Dr. Krock feel?
Well, to be honest, fake Dr. Krock is kind of exhausted, and now is as good a time as any to announce that he's going to be officially retiring from this channel. So yeah, I guess in what is going to be the shortest bit of all time, I'm going to stop doing the fake Dr. Krock thing, and I'm just going to answer your questions. And this is for a couple reasons. I'm new to YouTube. When I did my first music therapy episode, I was convinced that I'd come up with the most hilarious and genius idea to call myself fake Dr. Krock, until many of you let me know that fake Dr. Ben Levin had been doing this for 7 or 8 years at this point. Ben was extremely gracious. We got in touch and he was encouraging and didn't mind that I was doing a bit that he had already done, but still, it doesn't feel right. But also, I got some responses from viewers saying that they would prefer that I spent more time actually answering questions and less time doing a very poor job of acting. So I'm going to just drop the fake doctor thing and just answer your questions. It's still going to be music therapy. It's just not going to be with fake Dr. Krock. My next question comes from Michael Sarian, who is a person I love, a very close friend that I've spent a lot of time on the road with. He says, "Let's get into your mustache. I dig it, but it's a choice, and you made it at a young age. I want to look like James Joyce." Jake Reed asks, "What's your feeling on the NYC jazz scene through COVID? Are folks giving up on music and shifting to day jobs, or is there a sense that people will get through this and return to normal once clubs are open?" So this is a very pertinent question. You know, the whole reason I started my YouTube channel was because of COVID. I was the busiest I've ever been at the beginning of this year, and I was feeling great about my career. And then it all stopped. I'm sure a lot of you have been seeing in the news that jazz clubs are closing. There are a few that are going strong with the help of donors, live streaming, but live streaming is not a good replacement for jazz music. I wanted to point you all towards a blog post by my friend and band member of Big Heart Machine, Jennifer Wharton. I am trying to stay positive, but I'll put a link in the description. I really recommend that you read this. Jen says, "Musicians are a hardy bunch. We weather all sorts of storms. We pivot when we must, but always drop anything for a gig. We are constantly chasing success, and the happiness is the chase, the hang, even the slog. When you're on your 4th Radio City show of the day, or your first show of the week, or the 10:30 set at the Django, familiar faces and the prospect of making music is enough to get us through most situations. COVID has robbed us of our chase." So yes, things are very dark right now. I've been having a tough time myself. I only realized very recently when I was playing a gig outside at Prospect Park with my great friend, trumpet player Jake Henry, that I've really been sick with missing the jazz scene. Being a musician is a career path that is inherently social. I think there are benefits to being a musician that aren't monetary. One of the luckiest things is getting to go out every night and see interesting, creative, excited, motivated people. I've been really missing that. However, I do think things are going to go back to normal. I moved to New York in 2011. I didn't experience, for example, 9/11 or 2008 here in New York, but as far as I've heard from older colleagues, things tend to bounce back. You know, jazz has always been a career path that has involved day jobs and side hustles, and so I think it's a good thing in a certain sense to learn new things that you can incorporate into your career. So I hope that answers your question. So the next question comes from RV Peterson 095, and I want to spend the most time in this video on this question because it's a complicated question. Is it a good idea to get a master's degree in music? In general, I'm a believer in education, but this isn't a yes or no question. So What I like to do in these kind of situations is a simple list of pros and cons. Pros, cons. Within the pros column and within the cons column, there's going to be guaranteed pros or guaranteed cons, and not guaranteed pros and not guaranteed cons. So let's make a quick list here, okay? Guaranteed, that's a hard word to spell. Not guaranteed. Simple. In this situation, if the pros outweigh the cons, then yes, you should get a master's degree in music. But it's not for everybody. So the first and most obvious pro to me is that going to grad school is a clear path to meeting talented peers. And many people will tell you that the best thing they took away from their master's degree was the people that they met. This is absolutely true for me. Every single gig that I've ever had comes from a connection that I made in grad school. So that's a pro. Peers. To me, another guaranteed pro of doing a master's degree program is that you're going to have to work really hard. That might not sound obviously good, but I can tell you that in your day-to-day life, it's easy to become complacent. You have a lot of responsibilities that you need to attend to, and those only compound as you get older. So when you're young and you don't have any responsibilities to anyone other than yourself, it is a huge privilege to get to spend the majority of your time working hard, because that's how you get good at something. Work hard. What's another pro? I'm going to put good teacher. There's no other way to really learn the magic of how to play music well other than to be close to somebody who's already doing that. And so school is a good way to find yourself in that position. What are some not guaranteed pros? Work opportunities, question mark, as a not guaranteed pro, but it's still a good reason to go to school. Not guaranteed, liking your classmates. That's pretty self-explanatory, I think. I was lucky that my class at MSM turned out to be some of my best friends in the world, and we all love making music together and working together, and so we get to do that pretty often, or we got to do that pretty often before the pandemic. But I have heard of classes that just don't gel together, and that can be a huge bummer if you don't like the people that you're seeing every single day. You aren't guaranteed to make more money. So if your goals are financial, you ought to consider that, because one of the guaranteed cons of going to a master's program is somebody somewhere is going to spend a lot of money. Expensive. Maybe you have some sort of resource. If you can get scholarship, I would jump on that opportunity. Having student loans is scary and stressful. And if you miss a payment, the interest can be frightening. Living with the stress of student loans isn't worth anything. And if you're going to put yourself into a scary financial situation, think twice, because your own personal happiness and well-being is the most important thing. A guaranteed con of going to school is you're going to be delayed in starting your professional career. If you are faced with an opportunity to work, maybe you should take it. Now let's just blast through some. You might have to move. You might have BS classes that are a waste of your time. You might be exposed to something that you didn't even know that you didn't know about. You know, you might find out that you don't even want to do music through being in school, and that's a pro or a con. So I'm going to put it in the middle. That's a pro because you're learning something about yourself so you can move forward with your life, but that's a con because you'll have spent a lot of money and a lot of time to arrive at that conclusion. All right, so just in 15 minutes of making a list of pros and cons, I think that what I've made clear is that this is a complicated decision, and it's very incumbent upon you to look at your personal circumstances. My answer to this question is, I don't know. All right, so now I'm gonna just focus on clusters of questions because I got a lot of the same questions worded in different ways. Gabe Plotkin asked, favorite books on composition? Billy Blue asked, could you make a recommendation list on books about the history of music? Eduardo Fauer asked, top music composition books? Paul M asked, would you suggest a list of 5 to 10 pieces or collections of music to provide a lifetime study material to understand classical music? All right, so to answer this question, let's go over to my bookshelf. I've still got the Phantom Thread theme stuck in my head. Let's see, maybe this will work. Welcome to my bookshelf. I'm a big fan of reading, just in general. When you start with one book, it's going to lead you on a journey to more books. But for the purposes of this exercise, I'm going to just pick 5 books to answer Paul's question, because he's a Patreon patron, so he gets preference. Behind Bars by Elaine Gould. This is an important book, but it's a pretty boring book, and it's very expensive. But it's kind of like a dictionary or something. You don't read it cover to cover, but you just keep it in a easily accessible place because it's going to answer every question you might have about music notation. Oh man, I love all these books so much, it's going to be really hard to choose. Oh! This is a book a lot of people don't know about. Norman Del Mar, Anatomy of the Orchestra. If you have any interest in composition, arranging, orchestration, this is the book for you. It's a fun read. Norman Del Mar is an experienced conductor. This is just sort of like insider information about the orchestra. Okay. Now this is just turning into me showing you my bookshelf. Unfortunately, I don't think I can do like a comprehensive top 5 books, because 5 books are never going to tell you everything you need to know. Start with any book and just live your whole life on the journey of discovery. Just constantly read, constantly reevaluate what you know. So, okay, this book, Ludmila Ulala, Contemporary Harmony. I think for learning about 20th century Western classical music, that you can't do much better than this book. And I'm biased because everybody in my master's program had to work through this book. Yeah! But this would be a great place to start if you want to learn about modern classical music. Another one that's a great place to learn about modern classical music is Schoenberg's Theory of Harmony. And I like this book because Schoenberg's legacy is inescapable. You at least have to engage with it. A lot of people choose to ignore it thereafter, and that's their artistic decision, and that's fine. In terms of 20th century composers, you would be hard-pressed to find somebody who made a more astounding accomplishment in terms of codifying their own unique musical system. It's a thing of wonder, and it never gets old. Ernest Newman, The Wagner Operas. This is a great book for any musician. It doesn't matter what your interests are. There's so much to be learned from Wagner and from his operas. It will inspire you, I promise. This isn't a music book, but if you want to learn about what really gets me going artistically, get Ulysses, and also get the annotated accompaniment book. And spend many hours every day until you've read this book, and I promise you'll learn something about music. Alright, so those are all books. There's just so many good ones. The moral of this story is, if you really want to learn about music, books are not going to get you all the way there. Reading books is great. I love reading. I'm constantly reading. But if you want to learn about music, you have to go straight to the source. That means listening to a lot of music, and when it comes to composing, if that's what you're into, buying scores and studying them deeply. So I guess a roundabout way to answer all of these questions is scores. Scores are your best friend. If you want to learn how to compose, just spend some time with some really good scores. Now I'm going to recommend a few for you. Welcome to my piano bench. Ethan Iverson's Theory of Harmony, that's awesome. Select Your Existence by Matt Mitchell. Definitely going to do a score study about that someday. I think Bach's 2-part Inventions and 3-part Sinfonias are invaluable to any musician's library. My personal favorite score of all time, Ligeti's Violin Concerto. Good God. I mean, just look at one page of this. My brother got me this for Christmas many years ago. I couldn't understand it at all, and I still can't. Okay, this one you just gotta do. All the Beethoven symphonies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right now 7 is my favorite. This is a great book. Fred Sturm, Evolution of Jazz Arranging. Tristan, you gotta have it. Rite of Spring, it's a necessity. Oh, and that makes me think, where are you? This is actually my favorite Stravinsky score, Les Noces. Haydn string quartets. If you want to learn about string writing and you're new to string writing, Haydn string quartets. Man, those are a wealth of information. The tough part about scores is, like somebody asked, where do you find scores? I would say there's definitely publishers that sell big band scores. J.W. Pepper comes to mind. So just some Googling will work. If you want modern jazz scores, the best way to get them is just to probably email the artists themselves. But yes, sometimes you will have no choice but to transcribe something that you are interested in. So while we're on this topic, Unfollow Ben Malone asked, how do I transcribe solos or anything? And so I'm going to lay it out very simply. 1, whatever you want to transcribe, listen to it over and over and over and over again until you've basically memorized it. You should love the piece of music enough that you won't get sick of hearing it over and over again. And if you don't want to keep listening to it, then you might want to ask yourself, why am I even transcribing it then? Sing along with it, and sing as much as you can. Once you've really internalized the music and you can sing along with it, start playing it on your instrument. I hope I'm not making this sound easier than it is. This is a very time-consuming and difficult process. Go ahead and slow it down. You know, if you bought the music, then you have an MP3 of it, so you can import the MP3 into GarageBand or any free DAW, and at that point, you can slow it down. Sometimes people will say,
oh, you should never slow it down. If you have to slow it down, you're not hearing it.
I'm not a fan of that kind of machismo stuff. Slowing the music down actually is an incredible way of really getting inside the music. And we have the technology, so why not use it? Slow it down. Then when you slow it down, you can hear little subtleties like where a person's tongue is or how their throat is opening. You start to feel the way they're playing because you can feel it in your own body. So I think slowing music down is important. And then finally, I do recommend writing it down, because in writing it down, you're going to start to solidify that information in your own mind, and then you'll be able to reference it years and years later when you can no longer remember the solo. I guess number 5 would be stick with it, because it's really hard and frustrating. It's so time consuming. And I promise you, it gets easier the more you do it, just like everything else. It's all about hours spent. So last but not least, I had a lot of questions about teaching. Manzigio and Aaron Scott Callard Music asked, do I teach composition anywhere? The answer is yes, I do teach. I teach all ability levels. In fact, I love new students because I get to sort of get in there early and make sure they have good habits and stuff. You can sign up through Patreon. You'll get a monthly lesson and you'll get all the other benefits of Patreon. And I love my Patreon students. They're actually really inspiring me in my own writing. So it's kind of an awesome situation for everybody. And my email address is easy to find. Go ahead and shoot me an email. I do one-off lessons as well, assessing your current ability level and then suggesting paths for you to move forward. Whereas if we do regularly monthly lessons, we're going to have the chance to get to know one another and actually work on compositions together. So yeah, hit me up. Michael Tukulski asked me, how much classical training should you have to play jazz? And I hope this doesn't sound like I'm avoiding the question, but I want to answer that by saying erase should from your vocabulary. There's nothing you should do. For myself, I think classical saxophone training is hugely important. The thing is, there's a lot of stuff you're going to learn from a classical saxophone teacher that jazz saxophonists aren't really interested in. So I would say find a really great classical saxophone teacher and then take everything they say with a grain of salt, because at the end of the day, if your goal is to be a great musician, part of being a great musician is being yourself. And one of the hardest things I think to do as you get older is to remain true to what you feel and your own personal aesthetic, which leads me to my last question, which comes from my old classical saxophone teacher, Noah Evan. I've actually had two really great classical saxophone teachers. First was Noah Evan, who was a student of Deborah Richtmeyer, and then I got to study with Deborah Richtmeyer, and I would say those two teachers made a tremendous impact on me as an instrumentalist. What was the most valuable thing that still sticks with you from classical sax lessons? What sticks with me, besides for having a really cool teacher who ended up becoming a really good friend, I really specifically remember the aha moment of my tongue shape and feeling how to properly tongue the reed lightly, because before that I had been pretty much always like really attacking the reed whenever I tongued, and I couldn't not do that. I also remember Noah teaching me how to circular breathe, which hasn't really come in handy in my own music, but it's a valuable lesson. You know, what sticks out from my lessons from Deborah Richtmeyer was how specific she was about vibrato. I remember she had different names for different speeds of vibrato, and she really thought about the emotion in the music. So we were working on this piece called Tableau de Provence. I remember her talking about the emotional implications of individual notes and then saying, well, what type of vibrato does this situation call for? So I remember that vividly. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. I sincerely hope that this was valuable to you. I'm going to keep doing these music therapy sessions on a regular basis. Okay, done.